Hello. So happy holidays. We are going to be hopefully you having a great time. You had a good Christmas day, and today I thought I would just do some live streaming because I haven't posted any videos recently because I don't think video takes a lot of work. Have to edit it, have to clean up the audio, have to prepare the intro, all of these things. So, and also I don't get as many views or as many people seeing the videos as I get reading the blog. So I won't be doing as many videos, but that's okay. Today we're just going to do some live streaming. Let me know if you can see, you can hear me okay, everything is fine. Okay, so what we have, I wanted to show you some simple programming exercises. So for example, I like this one with the framing. You create a frame around some text. This one is relatively simple, but it teaches you a few things about programming, about problem solving, and about Ruby. I already solved it before a few times, but I'm going to solve it again with you, and we're going to go over the steps. I'm going to explain the steps. What you should be looking for is the actual thinking process, not the solution itself. That's okay, but it's more important to look at the actual thinking process of finding a solution, because that process you can apply to other problems different than this problem. Okay, so that's what we're going to start with, and if we finish this quickly, I have other challenges that we can work on. And if you have any questions, or you have an interesting coding challenge to work with, you can post that in the chat and I will look at that. Okay, so I'm going to get started right now after I take a sip of coffee. With stevia, no sugar. And so how do we get started with something like this? Well, the first thing you have to realize is that this is made up of components. It's not, everything is not one block. You are not supposed to write the code that does everything, like in this another. You're not supposed to write the code that solves the whole thing in one pass. You write in steps, in incremental steps. And this also works for Rails applications and for other kinds of applications, right? It's not only for these coding challenges. If you understand what your end goal is, what your outcome is, then you can work backwards and see, okay, so here are different components. In this case, we have these lines. So these two lines are the same, right? This like the frame. So the frame is one of the components. Now, another component is these spaces. And then another component is how do we break down the text so it fits in this format, right? So breaking down the text, processing the text is another one of these components. Okay, so you start by looking at what they want to do, what they want the final thing to look like, be it a coding challenge, an algorithm, a web application feature. because you make our application feature by feature, and every feature is also broken down into smaller steps. So for example, if you're doing like a search feature, have a video that's how to implement a search feature in Rails, that has to be broken down into a route. It has to be broken down into its controller, its view, and the interaction with the model, right? So all of these components, everyone has its role, and when put together, then you get the result that you want. So it's important to think like this instead of trying to find the solution for the whole thing in one step. You want to analyze and find out, okay, so how do I just do this? And I don't know how to do this line. Well, who just one asterisk? Well, one asterisk is just one asterisk, right? So if we go to prime, there, we already have one asterisk. Now, how do we make the whole line? Well, one way we could just do this, right? That's fine. But we can also count how many are there. We have 9. And then we can use a little trick, which is multiply. So notice this and these are different. Why? Because these have these quotation marks, and that means that this is data. This is a string. But here we're doing something. This is like an operation, a method, a command, right? So we can say, give me 9 of those, 9 asterisks. And tada, we get the same as if I just do this. We get the same by doing this. Another advantage is twofold. One is that we know exactly how many of these asterisks are there. So that can be helpful to know for various reasons. We might need to know this for inner formatting of this text, right? To know how width is this box. How wide is the box. Another reason this is helpful versus just hard coding the line like this is that we can easily change this. So now if we want this to be twice as wide, I can just do 18 instead, and we know that this line is exactly twice as long as the previous one, and you don't have to be counting, okay, so this 10, this 11, this 12, 15, 14, 15, right? Maybe there is also a chance that if you do this manually, you can miscount. So these are the advantages of choosing this way to do it, this way to multiply the strength. And this also works with, oh, and by the way, this way to see the method, this is one of the many ways. If you get my Ruby book, I have other different ways for working with Pry, which is a Ruby interpreter where you can type code and you see what happens. So this is super helpful for learning. It's also super helpful when you are building a new feature for your Rails application or your Sinatra application. It's also very helpful when you're doing this kind of coding challenges. I use Pry or IRB all the time, so just to figure out what these small components are and how to do them, how to get them working, right? And one of the things you can do is you can access the Ruby documentation from inside these tools. And you choose one way to do it is the RI command. Tells us that it takes an integer and gives us a new string. So str, every time you see str in the documentation, this usually means string. So str means string, okay? So now you know, if you didn't know that, now you do. Okay. Now we have a little description there. An integer is, of course, basically a number. It can be a whole number, so it can be 1, can be -1, can be 0, but it doesn't include decimal numbers or floating point numbers, right? That's not integer. So 0.1, this is a float, okay? This is called a float. How do I know? Because you can call the class method and it tells you. Ruby tells you. If you ask Ruby, okay, I have this thing, what is it? Well, you ask with the class method like this, and it tells you exactly what you're working with, okay? And I find that very helpful. And by the way, as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can type them in chat. Also, remember to look at the structure. You want to look at how things, what's the process, rather than just the details. Details are important also, but it's easy to get lost in detail, right? And sometimes you have to take a step back, look how the thing is put together. What's the process? What are the steps? What is the thinking that goes behind doing this thing? I'm showing you my thinking process here. I'm also showing you some useful tricks and tools that you can apply to your coding practice. Okay? So yeah, we just show the class. If you didn't know that, it's super helpful to know what you're working with. I also told you that str means string. Of course, it's kind of, you might say, well, that's obvious. But for some people, it isn't. You have to spell it out, and that's okay, because they might not be familiar with that. For me, when I see str, I know this string. And that's what it means. A new str means new string, right? And we look at this difference between this and that. The difference is a string, and it is an actual operation on the string, right? So we're telling Ruby, give me 9 of these stars. I can also be 9 of anything, by the way. I can do 9 ones or 9 nines, like that, if you wanted to, right? So if we multiply anything that you put in there, I can also be 2 characters. Notice that if it's 2 characters, if we just repeat this 9 times, so that means if we do this for times 2, right? So keep that in mind. So that's the long explanation, the most detailed explanation I can give you on to how to create this little line. I know the line below is the same thing. So because we know how to make this one, now we can also make this one below because it's the same, right? So what I like to do is we can save this as a variable, so we can use it. We can call this something like frame. Okay, what's that about? Oh, because frame has a special meaning in Pry. So I'm getting this confusing error. So let's call this asterisk. I don't know, what would be a good name? How about top frame times plus, if you do plus, instead of times, like this, what happens? Well, something different, because if I have a number, I get an error, because plus is a different operation with strings. It's not adding them up directly, because this number, it has to be a string, right? So this is a different operation. A lot of people, well, you can get confused here, because this might mean different things in mathematics, but for strings, they have very specific meaning in Ruby. And if you don't know what this is, well, you can learn by trying them. You can try in Pry or IRB, and you find out. You can also read about it in Google and the official Ruby documentation, right? So yeah, that's just a little detour to show you that. So we have our top frame, which is also going to be our bottom frame. And then the next line already has some text. So the next line has an asterisk, so like this, then a space, then some text, and then another space and an asterisk. So if we were to like hard code the output, it will be something like that, right? Only that, how many spaces will we have here? Well, it is 5 spaces, because 5, 6, 7, and 8. Because this 9 total, it's 9 total, right? So we have 5 spaces, so let's do that. So it would look something like put top frame and put that. That will be like the lines and then top frame, right? So now, if we know this, the only thing that's left to figure out is how do we break down the text into these bits, right? So let's say have some text. Let's write hello there, let's have fun with Ruby, something like that. We want to break this down into words. We can do split and no, just split. But then we have some words that are longer. Now this 4, 5. Yeah, that's pretty good. 5, 5. So we just need to remove this comma. We don't want the comma. So how do we remove the comma? Well, there are different ways we can do this. We could just do a gsub. So gsub means global substitute. Global, the G is for global, and sub is for substitute. So we can do comma. That's what I want to match. And again, this comma and this comma have different meanings. So don't get confused there. The meaning depends on the context. And here, the comma is surrounded with these forward slashes. That means this is a regular expression. It's a regular expression. What's that? Well, a regular expression is something that you can use for pattern matching, right? And I have a whole chapter about this in my Ruby book, if you're interested in that. There are other important things in the book, like performance, metaprogramming, blocks, lazy enumerators, singleton class, a lot of very important topics if you want to become a professional Ruby developer. So the book is called Ruby Deep Dive. You can find it at RubyGuides.com. So let's keep going after another sip of coffee. Okay, so I think, yes, this removes the commas as I was expecting. Why? Because GSOP global substitute, it looks for the comma for the pattern. In this case, just a comma. You can use more complex patterns. In this case, very simple pattern with just one character. And then we say replace it with empty, with nothing. Replace it with nothing is, which basically it translates to remove it, right? There is nothing that is just says remove it, but if you do empty string, that basically means remove it. And because we're replacing with nothing, we're replacing comma with nothing. That's why the comma is now gone. And when you're doing this, if it doesn't work right away, then think about why it didn't work. And then try something different. And repeat until it works. Sometimes you have to keep trying the same approach for a few times. If that approach doesn't seem to work after you have really tried and maybe Google for some ideas, then you try a different approach to solve the problem, right? But don't stop on your first approach too fast, because maybe that was the right approach, but you just had to make a little change, a little tweak to make it really work, okay? So in this case, it worked right away because something pretty simple. And why I'm doing GSOP before split? Well, because GSOP works in the whole string. It's a string, we could say it's a string wide kind of operation. But when we do a split is a transformation. It changes the type of the object we're working with, basically. So when you do split, you break down the split, that's why it's called split, you break down the string into another type of object, which is an array, okay? So this is a very important point. When you change from one type of object, like a string, to another, an array, then you have different operations you can do, meaning that GSOP is not, it doesn't work with arrays. It has to work with a string. That's why I'm doing GSOP before split, okay? Again, remember that you can use the dot class if you aren't sure what kind of object you're working with, which is very important. Okay, so now we have our array. What can you do with arrays? Do you know that? Are you familiar with the different arrays operations that are available? Well, the different operations that are available with arrays is basically looping. Things like each, things like select, map, inject, and there are many more that are available. There are over 20 different operations like this that you can do. And the more of these you know, the better developer you are, because you have more flexibility. You can do more things with your arrays and with your data, right? So which one do we choose? Well, in this case, we just want to iterate, which means we want to loop over every element and nothing else. We don't want to change it, we don't want to filter it, we don't want to add it up, we don't want to make it into groups, we don't want to do anything special with this data. We just want to print it. So for that, each is perfect because each doesn't do anything special. It just loops over, it iterates over the elements, and then it allows you to print them. So that's why we're going to use each. So I'm going to save this into a variable, and this is going to call words, and then we can do words.each, and then we need to what is called a block. So a block in Ruby has two forms. It can be with these curly brackets, right? The other form is with two and then end, right? Like this, two, end, right? Don't forget the end. And don't forget if you're doing the brackets, so you do either one or the other. You don't want to mix them up, right? Because you will get an error. Ruby is expecting you to follow the language rules and follow the language syntax, because it's like you're speaking a language, like an actual human language, like English or Spanish, right? If you don't use the right words, or you speak like in reverse, or you mix up your words order in your speaking your phrases, then the other person is going to have a hard time understanding you. So it's important that you understand the rules, extra important in programming, because computers follow these hard rules that if you use an opening bracket, you have to have a closing bracket. If you use an opening do statement, then you have to have a closing end statement, right? That's the way it works. So with that point made, now we can choose to use this like this kind of block with the curly brackets. I call these curly brackets, maybe they have other names. I just know them as curly brackets because they're like curly, yeah. So inside a block, we can have something called a block parameter. A block parameter. And what's this? Well, this is going to be every one of these individual words. So if I do put W, I choose W because words. You can see that the resulting output of doing this is all of the words line by line, okay? So now we can start to put things together. At this point, we'll have all of the pieces, right? So let's quickly review. We have the top frame, right? Which we put together, not like that, like this, right? And the top frame is also the bottom frame, there, right? The top frame is also the bottom frame. So we have this piece. We also have the individual lines. So the lines are made of this part, which is here, this. And notice the space. You have to put the space in there, which is here, right? Right there. And then the text, space, asterisk. So let's do this. We can do asterisk, space, and then we can put our word in here with string interpolation. This is called string interpolation. Then another space and our asterisk. There is something going on, so we're still missing a piece, because notice that in here, even if the word is smaller than the full space, the asterisks are still aligned, right? As you can see here, they are all in the same line. So how do we fix that? Because that's not what's happening here. Well, we need to add extra spaces, right? So there is one way to do this, which is called rjust. Let's see, or 1.5 ljust, and we want 6. There we go. You see? Now the asterisks are all aligned with the other. So what is just 6 min? Well, just is a method that we call on a string. If we make sure that the size of the string is at least 6 characters wide. Okay, so we pad the string for us, we pad the string, we add spaces. In other words, we add spaces for you so that it has this alignment, because what's pushing this star out to the right is the spaces, right? So sometimes it's hard to see because the spaces look empty, but they are there. Other ways, if you don't have the spaces, then this is what happens, right? The asterisk comes right after the word, okay? So the final piece right now is to take our frame. So we're going to do top frame, then here I have a semicolons on Ruby. We never use semicolons normally, but in this specific situation, I want to put the whole program, the whole solution together in one line of code. So the semicolon, this special situation, remember, allows me to separate two different expressions so I can have them in the same line. Ta-da! Ta-da! There you go. So that looks like that, right? That's the solution. And you see how we put this together step by step. We start by analyzing the problem, by understanding the problem. And a lot of problems are hard to solve because you don't really understand what you're trying to do, right? That's what I find after doing over 500 coding challenges, a lot of many years, over 20 years of programming. But I find most of the time the problem is that you don't really understand what you are trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and then how to break it down into steps, right? So if you really understand what you are going to do, then you can break it down into steps, then figure out the individual steps, and then put everything together, okay? So if I did this in my editor, I would not use semicolons. Like I said, a special thing for IRB or Pride. If I do this in normally, then I will just take the things in here. I will take my components, my pieces right there, and then I will take my frame, right there. Then we can, oops, can do this. There it goes, right? So that's the solution. Of course, it's not the only possible solution. You can do it in different ways. I think we can do that as well. Yes. So I just changed this because I noticed that here is a space, here is no space. So one of the things that can throw you off when you are reading code is why is this like this why is here a space? But here is no space, right? The first time you look at this code, you have no idea what this is all about. The first thing I would see is that here is a space, here is no space, right? But it's easier to understand if both sides have a space. It's more consistent, right? So it's like a consistency principle. If both sides have a space, that makes more sense. So I can make that happen and work and get the same result. If I just make this instead of 6, I make this 5, and then I add the space, right? So there is that. If you have any questions, let me know. I will be happy to answer them for you. If not, you might want to, if you are familiar with my website, I have this website called RubyGuides. It's very popular. I don't say that just to say it, because it's true. Is if you look, you search anything Ruby, there's a high chance that my website is going to come up. Has thousands of daily readers. I have that on Google Analytics, and a lot of people like it, so you might like it too. And if you want to go deeper and have more organized reading, then I really recommend getting a copy of my book. Because the book, what it does for you is, first, when you buy something, you're more committed to it, right? You're like, have a higher chance of doing the thing, of reading, of doing the work, right? And also you have the information is better organized, and you don't have to be online. You can put it you can read in your phone when you're waiting for the bus or whatever, right? It's a PDF. I put out a lot of work into this, so I think you will like it. So that's it. Any questions about Ruby, about RubyGuides, which is my website, or about this particular challenge that we just done? Feel free to type in the chat. So if there are no questions in the next, if there are no questions in the next 5 minutes, just going to end the chat. I mean, end the live stream. Hey Alex, I read your books and see your channel on YouTube. Thank you, and happy holidays. Hope you're having a great time. Go next, got it, man. Do you want another challenge? What do you mean by go next? Thanks, you too. Yeah. So there are a few here, but they're pretty not that super interesting. I just like this one because very visual. It's very easy to see what's happening, right? Uh, mm, mm, mm. But the process is the same. Oh, if you don't know, by the way, Ruby 2.7 just came out and has a lot of new features, so that's very helpful. I have an article on Ruby 2.7 news, if you didn't know that. So I really recommend that you read this. Here you go. So what's your favorite Ruby 2.7 feature? I find the pattern matching very interesting, if you have tried this. I also like this one. Where is it? This one. The number parameters, right? Because right here we had to say this parameter W, right? But with Ruby 2.7, instead of this, you can say underscore 1, like this. Right? If also RB change and you get Discord message. So now we can do this. And there you go. Instead of this equivalent to doing this. It's not that much of a change, but it saves you some work. It saves you from having to write this. Also there is 2, but 2 is if you have multiple. So if this was like 1, A and B, then A is the first one, B is the second one, which is basically underscore 2. So that's number parameters in Ruby 2.7. Well, I think I'm done for now. Maybe I will live stream again tomorrow or some other day. I like the live stream because you can just go on. You don't have to be on a very particular topic. You don't have to prepare a lot, and you don't have to edit. So that's that. So I might be doing more live streams, but no promises there. Just an idea. Although I'm surprised we didn't get more people watching. So it's just 2 people watching right now. Concurrent viewers 2. I guess everybody just celebrating still Christmas hangover or whatever. Alright, that's that. Thanks a lot for watching. I will see you in other videos in my website and all of that. Thank you and have a good day.